Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Damiani.
And I'm Dr. Brent Elder.
Welcome to our webinar on strength-based approaches to IEP writing. Throughout this presentation, you will find that many slides include hyperlinks to sources or additional information so you're able to access them easily at any time. This slide provides an overview of today's agenda. In today's session, we're going to be talking about distance learning in IEPs, New Jersey statistics on inclusive education, special education as social justice, and thinking about our responsibilities. What can we do, actions we can take in our practices now and moving forward to ensure that we are meeting these responsibilities. We'll also provide you with a tip or tool, a virtual IEP meeting tip sheet that can assist you at any time.
All right. In this initial 15-minute overview, we will provide participants with the most current statistics about inclusive education in New Jersey. We will then describe inclusive education through a lens of social justice and provide a definition and examples of strength-based approaches to writing IEPs, including considerations that have emerged in light of COVID-19. We will provide participants with a brief overview about how we will be delving into this content and its application more deeply in the next segments of this professional learning series.
And a little bit more about us as your presenters. So aside from going to graduate school together at Syracuse University, where Brent and I became friends and colleagues, we also have similar professional backgrounds and research interests. Prior to pursuing our PhDs in inclusive special education and disability studies, we were both inclusive elementary school teachers. We are both now professors at Rowan University in the Department of Interdisciplinary and Inclusive Education and continue to work with schools to support inclusion, including schools with limited resources. Dr. Elder is deeply involved in merging theory to practice in professional development schools, and Dr. Damiani is involved with diversifying the teacher workforce through understanding the experiences and contributions of educators with disabilities. In light of the pandemic and the need for education to shift to remote collaboration, we will address strength-based IEP writing in this context. We'll discuss this in greater detail in the next webinar, but here's that tip or tool sheet that we wanted you to know you have at your fingertips now. We encourage you to look at this if you get an opportunity and to check out the resources that are available to you.
All right, when we talk about inclusive education, we always feel that statistics is a good foundation to start with. So the New Jersey statistics on inclusive education. Where does New Jersey rank for inclusive education in the United States? Do you think New Jersey ranks in the top 10, in the top 20, the top 30, top 40, or top 50? And think about why you chose the ranking. And New Jersey ranks 48th in the United States, only ahead of Guam and Hawaii, respectively. So this means we have a lot of work to do when it comes to inclusive education. We'll unpack this a bit more. So New Jersey is the third most segregated of the United States and territories when it comes to including students with disabilities for at least 80% of the time. In New Jersey, only 46% of its students with disabilities included 80% or more of the time, and 15% spent more than 60% of their day in special education settings.
Yeah, so let's just think about that for a minute. This is not to suggest that even the percentage of students with disabilities who are reported here are fully included in their classrooms. Notice that the metric here was based on when students with disabilities were included at least 80% of the time or more, but that leaves an additional up to 20% of time, 20% of where students with disabilities may be excluded according to the law. In New Jersey, that 46% indicates that fewer than half of the students with disabilities are included for at least 80% of the school day. And this is strictly based on the minutes of time on their IEP. It's not indicative of the quality of instruction that was received during that time.
To complicate the picture of inclusive education further in New Jersey is only above Washington, D.C. at 9.98% and Connecticut at 7.97% in terms of placing the most students with disabilities in separate schools or residential facilities. This means that students with the most complex support needs aren't even being considered in most public schools in the state. But don't worry, because New Jersey is not alone in trying to figure out how to deliver quality, inclusive education to students with disabilities. New Jersey is in the company of California, Hawaii, New York, New Mexico, Connecticut. So not to say that New Jersey is the only one struggling to figure this out. We have a lot of other company, which means there's a lot of work for us to do collectively.
And so the question becomes, what does this mean? What do all these statistics mean for us? Nothing will change if we don't shift our understanding of students, their right to education, and how we plan for them. It bears repeating that special education is a coordinated set of services that follows the student. Special education is not a place. In other words, it's not a designated classroom or programming for students based on a particular disability label. All students should have access to inclusive education in their neighborhood schools with their neighborhood peers. A common misconception that we hear all the time is that all students must do the same thing in the same way, or that students with the same or similar disability labels should have similar goals. All students can accomplish goals and high expectations if organized around their strengths, their needs, and by making appropriate use of supplemental supports, aids, and services. When we expect that students with disabilities belong, truly belong, and will be included, the question then becomes not, can we do this, should we do this, but how we will do this, an action-oriented question. And strength-based approaches and IEPs can help us here. On this slide, you should see some familiar laws and legal decisions driving inclusive education in the United States today. IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, guarantees all students with disabilities the right to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Those are often referred to by acronym FAPE and LRE. The most recent 2017 legal decision, Andrew versus Douglas County School District, had applications that all educators need to be aware of and understand. A few among these are that each child needs to have the opportunity to learn, to receive meaningful benefit, and to meet challenging objectives under his or her individualized education program. The IDEA contains substantive requirements for appropriate programming, including program reviews and updating goals and services on the IEP that enable each student to make adequate educational progress and that reflect the student's progress and growth. And so educational programs must be appropriately ambitious, as it was termed, that the goals may differ, but every child should have a chance to meet challenging objectives. And a school cannot satisfy these IDEA obligations by planning for barely more than de minimis, as it was referred to. And so as educational professionals, we wouldn't say that our end goal for a student is barely more than the minimum standard. We would never say that that's sufficient for any student. Likewise, in our schools, teaching and programming for students, we should be looking not to meet minimum legal requirements, but rather we should have high expectations for every student and establish high quality and equitable learning opportunities for all students to achieve those goals. So Ender's focus on the IEP and the relevant supports is informative to our discussions of strength-based IEP writing in this series.
So what does all this mean? This means that inclusion is an issue related to social justice and equity, which includes acknowledging the intersections of race and disability, particularly of note in the United States. This doesn't mean that all students need the same supports to get the same benefit, which is the image on the left. This means that students need to be given the appropriate supports they need in order to access education on par with their non-disabled peers, the image in the middle. Or that proactive accommodations and modifications need to be provided in order to remove educational barriers from the outset, which is the image on the right. Notice that equity is different from equality. Equity disrupts notions of equality where everyone gets the same thing and engages the systemic nature of barriers in education, whether that be in the classroom environment, in the curriculum, in the IEP, and so on. And so in this cartoon here, we have in the top left image, someone speaking to a principal asking questions. Do you have inclusion facilitators? No. Do you have inclusion classrooms? No. Do you have inclusion programs? No. And the person asks, why not? And the principal says, because everyone's included, and inclusive education becomes a moot point. And so when strength-based IEPs are written in which include the provision of proactive accommodations and modifications, then the differences between special education and general education begin to dissolve, and everyone has access to what they need to be successful in schools.
And so foundationally, this means that we have to believe that all students are competent and capable, and we have to recognize that the onus is on all of us as educational professionals to create opportunities for students to demonstrate that competence. This idea is often referred to as the presumption of competence. And one way to do this is to write strength-based IEPs. Students will rise to the bar that we set for them. And so we need to set up programming that recognizes and engages students, all students, as capable, competent learners.
So in the second part of this webinar series, we'll be introducing, describing, and unpacking how to apply the following tools to implement strength-based approaches in schools. Some of these tools include understanding a little bit more about what strength-based approaches are, how to do person-centered planning, how to set up structures for action plan meetings, how to develop fast facts, how to develop IEP matrices, giving out in-class checklists and adaptations that facilitate inclusion, and strategies to engage a co-teaching model.
So Brent and I want to thank you for taking the time to engage with this presentation. We look forward to a more in-depth conversation in the second part of this series.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.